Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The province announced today that we are going back to a mask mandate beginning on Saturday. We have the details. A mixed martial arts fighter in Lethbridge has come forward seeking the mayoral chair next month. And a special Prayer in the Park event was held at Bell Gardens on Thursday night, praying for this municipal elections candidates.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The province announced that beginning on Saturday, Alberta will be going back to mandatory masks at indoor public spaces and workplaces. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says the Delta variant is making its way through the 30% of Albertans who are unvaccinated, causing beds in the ICUs to fill up. Shandro says 80% of new patients are those who have not yet received the jab. He says the Delta variant is straining the healthcare system and masking right now is necessary.
For workplaces, that means that employees must mask for all indoor settings except for workstations or where 2-meter physical distancing or adequate physical barriers are in place. This also means that masking on public transit will remain in effect until further notice. Masking in acute and continuing care was previously extended, so let me remind you that we must continue to wear masks at any of those facilities. Now, regarding schools, school boards will continue to set COVID management policies as they deem appropriate. The provincial mask mandate will not need to apply to schools. Masks will help slow the spread of the virus and the impact on the health system, and this is a step that we can take with minimal disruption of businesses and people's normal activities.
Premier Jason Kenney says to incentivize more Albertans to get the jab, beginning September 13th, the province will be offering $100 gift cards for those receiving their first or second shots. Opposition leader Rachel Notley says she's extremely disappointed by the UCP announcement to put more restrictions on Albertans. She says the new restrictions are unfair for the 70% of Albertans who've chosen to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Notley has been pushing the government to adopt a vaccine passport rather than implementing new restrictions across the province.
So the Premier has failed again. He has brought Alberta to a place of imminent danger to our healthcare system. Jason Kenney is choosing to pay the angry mobs who were literally protesting outside of our hospitals, blocking ambulances, while cutting the wages of the nurses who are working inside of them. He has once again put his own internal political interest ahead of the interests of all Albertans' public health. Again. Enough is enough. It's time we started standing up for the majority of Albertans who are doing the right thing, and Albertans agree.
The president of Alberta Health Services spoke out against recent protests which took place at a handful of provincial healthcare facilities. Dr. Verna Yu said while she supports the right to a peaceful protest, she was frustrated that some of the events turned into personal attacks on physicians and staff. She says it was extremely unsettling when AHS employees were yelled at and how some patients were obstructed from entering facilities to receive care. In a statement today, Dr. Yu said, "If you oppose masking, vaccinations, or any other measures taken to prevent COVID-19 transmission, that is your right. But to target healthcare workers with anger and vitriol is not acceptable, particularly now." Dr. Yu also says surgeries have to be cancelled as more ICU beds are being taken up.
The number of Albertans needing ICU care has increased rapidly in the past week. And while our frontline teams are doing an incredible job in caring for Albertans, we need your help. Beginning this morning, AHS is going to be postponing non-urgent surgeries and procedures across all 5 zones. The specific number of postponements will be determined by the zone. All patients who are affected will be contacted directly by Alberta Health Services.
Alberta currently has close to 13,000 active cases of COVID-19, including over 1,300 here in the South Zone. Conservative Party leader Erin Otoole made a campaign stop in Montreal. Otoole says he still cannot believe that Canadians are heading back to the polls on September the 20th in the middle of a pandemic.
We should not be in a campaign. Only Mr. Trudeau wanted this campaign for his own personal interest. And last night, he threatened another election if he doesn't get his way with this one. Canadians deserve better than that. we have a plan to very carefully monitor public health guidance. As you know, we have a studio that we've used in part to make sure that our campaign is always ready to have a hybrid. I want to meet as many people as possible to talk about our recovery plan, but we have to make sure that public health and safety is paramount.
Jeffrey Capp has decided to run for the Christian Heritage Party here in Lethbridge in the upcoming federal election. Capp has worked with the party for over 30 years, and he says his group would offer something neither the Conservative Party nor the Liberal Party will.
We offer you a standard, the Bible, its ethics, its morals. You can hold us to that standard. No other party will give you a sound standard like that. They'll only give you ones written by themselves, ethical rules, sets that they put together to try and govern themselves with. We offer you something that no man has originated. And if we are in a position to put pressure on a minority government, we will press on them to manage federal finances soundly, to administer our laws in a just and fair manner, equal to everybody.
A total of 6 candidates are now running in the Lethbridge area. The federal election is coming up on September the 20th. Colton Menzak is an MMA fighter. He's also someone who wants to become the next mayor of Lethbridge. We recently chatted with Mr. Menzak about his platform and why he wants the city's top job.
And I decided to run for mayor just because watching all the problems in town and, you know, the homelessness, the debt, things like this just keep going spiraling more and more out of control. And doesn't seem like anyone really has an answer. So I think that I do have the answers, or if I don't, I'll be able to find them, or someone does, or we can see what's worked before and use that.
Colton Menzak also told Bridge City News how he'd like to see a number of drugs decriminalized. Catch that insightful interview coming up in the second half of our program. Lethbridge City Councillor Jeffrey Kaufman announced today that he will not be seeking re-election this October. Kaufman said when he was re-elected in 2011, he would commit himself to a 3-year term limit because he says 10 years should be enough to accomplish his policy agenda that inspired him to run in the first place. He first served council back in 1995 to 1998. He says he believes that he achieved 90% of his goal. Kaufman says his biggest accomplishment was achieving a good governance.
This past term has been quite a success. We've actually managed to achieve an awful lot on the concept of good governance. And it's really about decision-making that's based on evidence and data. It's about council having very fulsome conversations, the restructure to the committee, standing policy committee structure. There's a new procedure bylaw that the next council is going to be implementing. Hiring of the city manager, all of these things are really focused on this idea of good governance, and it's really set the next council up with a very solid foundation. It's going to lead to better decision making, better outcomes for the organization, which really leads to better outcomes to the community.
Kaufman's last day at City Hall will be October the 31st. He says once he leaves public office, he'll resume teaching at the U of L in the winter semester and spend more time with his family. A local church organization held a prayer in the park on Thursday evening. Around 60 people turned out, including a large majority of mayoral and city councillor candidates. As Carson Marasuk explains, the goal was to meet one another and for the candidates to receive a blessing ahead of the next municipal election.
Amazing Grace Community Church hosted the prayer in the park, which saw a large number of municipal candidates attend. Organizer Colette Ikema says it was important to connect the Christian community with potential candidates ahead of the fall election.
The biggest thing that we're trying to do is show the city that we have a church community, a faith-based community that cares about the people who live here and the people who lead this city.
Councillor Hopeful Kauti Baird says she was apprehensive about attending at first, but thought it was important to support everyone.
Also to just connect. This is not a community I get regular interaction with, not being a person of faith myself. So it's very interesting for me to come out and experience the sense of community that faith brings.
The event began with each candidate giving a 2-minute speech and a group prayer before they broke off into smaller groups to meet one another more personally. Organizers say rather than holding a forum for everyone to meet one another, they thought prayer would be a great alternative. Mayoral candidates Blaine Higgin and Bridget Mearns say it was important to attend the prayer as a way to build community support.
It's important for any group to participate and be part of any organization or any group so that we understand what the community is all about. We're very diverse in Lethbridge, and to be a part of all the different community events that are here is extremely important.
One of the important things of mayor is being able to come out to different communities and speak with them and learn what they have to say. I think it's a a great thing that we've seen here tonight. Some of these candidates I've never met before, so it's a wonderful opportunity to hear what they have to say.
Attendees also say they were happy to come out and meet the potential candidates.
I think really important for us as Christians, as people who believe in God, to pray over them and pray for strength, pray for peace, especially the election can be a really trying time.
The municipal election is on October 18th. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marsouk.
The head of a panel collecting public input about coal in the Rocky Mountains says Albertans have a lot to say on the issue. As the committee wraps up its hearings, Ron Wallace says the main theme is that people want policy for how the province will use and enjoy the Rockies, not just directives on how and where mines will be built. Wallace says the committee did hear from those who want jobs that mining could bring. He says, however, that more submissions dealt with Albertans concerned about water contamination, endangered species, and recreational impacts. The harvest season is starting up across southern Alberta, and with the harvest comes agricultural equipment traveling on our roadways. These machines are known to be slow-moving, take up a large portion of the road, and aren't lit as well as other vehicles. The Director of Public Operations with Lethbridge County, Jeremy Wixon, says it's important to take your time and to not be in a rush this harvest season.
For dusk conditions or late in the day conditions, you definitely need to be aware that tractors and stuff like that are on the highway, because lots of times they're not as well lit up as regular commercial traffic. So as far as moving in and around those pieces of traffic, it's just a question of using the appropriate passing at the safe time, following them as you need to, depending on if you're on a single lane highway or a double lane highway or on a gravel road. In some instances, there is situations on a lot of our gravel roads where with the size of some of the agricultural equipment, you will need to pull into an approach so that vehicle can pass by you.
Harvest season runs until early November, so Lethbridge County says it's important to keep an eye out for the slow-moving machinery until then. Axe throwing has become more popular in recent years, even culminating in championships being held to determine the best axe thrower in Canada. As Micah Quinn explains now, an axe throwing fundraiser will be held in our city to raise money for a great cause.
Amy Overs, or better known by her axe throwing name, Battle Axe, says 3 years ago she went with her husband Mark to throw axes for his 40th birthday party. Since then, they've both been to the International Axe Throwing Championship in Toronto. Now Overs will be competing in a Lethbridge fundraising event called Burn Battle 2021.
It will be mixed, and there'll be prizes for the top thrower, top female, different raffles and draws to raise more money.
All of the money raised will go to the Jack Addy Cancer Center.
For myself, cancer has been a big part of our life. Unfortunately, I've had some family members that have had to fight it. We've lost some family members. Some family members have overcome it, beat it, are doing quite well. We have some friends that have lost some family members in the last few months and different members of the community.
You might be wondering just exactly how axe throwing works. Overs says it's a simple process once you get used to it.
We have a 3-ring target. So right here we have the black is the bulls. That is the one we go for the majority of the time, and that's worth 5 points. Then in the red is 3 and the blue is 1, and then the green dot is a clutch, and that's your last throw each round, and that's worth 7 points. So our games consist of 3 rounds, 5 throws. It always has to be a winner. So the person who wins each round keeps moving on, so you need to win 2 rounds in a game to win the game.
Burn Battle 2021 will be held at True North Axe Throwing in Lethbridge on October 3rd.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
RCMP say an 84-year-old man from Saskatchewan was killed in a plane crash in northern Alberta. Mounties responded to a report of a crash Tuesday morning in the area of Martin Mountain, which is located near Slave Lake. Police say the pilot, who was alone at the time, was from Rosthern and was found dead yesterday. Officials from the Transportation Safety Board have begun to investigate the crash. Vaccine passports went into effect today in Manitoba. The province says it is strengthening public health measures to fend off a 4th wave of the pandemic. Proof of vaccination is now required to enter non-essential businesses, including restaurants, pubs, bingo halls, gyms, and movie theaters. The province's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Brent Rusin, says the measure could help avoid another shutdown and encourage people to get their shots. The province has already reintroduced a mask mandate for indoor public spaces. Improving weather conditions are helping crews battle the Caldora Fire, which is threatening communities near Lake Tahoe in Northern California. Fire commanders warned, however, that the forest was still extremely dry and wind gusts were on the way.
The fire right now is sort of bumping the border here of Heavenly Valley ski area, but a lot of good work has gone in right along this northern perimeter of the fire on this northeast side to protect all these housing developments in here, all the neighborhoods that are at these heads. We have a strong dozer line put in here, and there's some hazard tree reduction going on as well, so we anticipate being able to hold this line and keep a lot of these neighborhoods safe as well.
Some Afghan Americans who recently escaped the Taliban in Afghanistan spoke to the media for the first time, describing their journey on fleeing their homeland.
Really hard for us to pass the Taliban gate. And they told us, why you guys are leaving Afghanistan? Why you guys not staying here with us? I told them, that's our country, that's my nation, we living there. So we have to get out of here. So finally we came here, and it wasn't easy. I was 4 days stuck inside the base with my 5 kids through the sunshine, no shelter, nothing.
We are getting closer to the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which claimed thousands of lives. The father of a woman who died that day, September 11th, 2001, says his life has never been the same since that tragic day.
Thank you, Dad, for always being there, helping me. It means a lot, and I love you a ton. But I know I was loved. I'm loved. And very happy about that. But it was a habit, her artwork. It was a stress reliever to her. These are not the happy things you want to remember someone by. We had both, Andrea and I, had watched the 93 bombing and how terrible that was. And, you know, that in the back of our minds, she was nervous about the trip. She was up in the 92nd floor, and actually when the plane hit, she was on the phone with her fiance, Al, in Chicago, describing the view of the Statue of Liberty.
He's an amazing person.
Well, we've had some nice weather for Whoop Up days today, and that should continue into the weekend. Complete weather details are coming up. It was another beautiful day across much of southwestern Alberta today. Jeanette Rocher is back with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it should be a great weekend for heading down to Whoop Up Days at Exhibition Park right here in Lethbridge.
Yeah, I would say that summer is definitely kicking around, and it's more than welcome to as far as I'm concerned. So it should be a lovely one this weekend at Whoop Up Days, as well as a nice 3-day weekend for us. So let's look at these temperatures. 25, lots of sunshine on Saturday, into Sunday we're looking at highs of up to 29 degrees, 24 on Monday for Labor Day with a mix of sun and cloud. Into Tuesday, 25 the high, 27 for Wednesday, and 26 on Thursday with a mix of sun and cloud. So I'm loving these temperatures, showing us that summer definitely sticking around. I'm more than happy about that for sure. Well above the average high for this time of year for the next week anyways, 23. 7 degrees, the average low for this time of year. 37 was what we were looking at back in 1950. That was a hot one. Back in 1962, we had the chilliest, which was only -2. That's way too cold for this time of year. Sun rose this morning at 6:50, and our evening sunset tonight at 8:11 p.m. seeing those times getting shorter and shorter by the day. Let's take a look at the West Coast. Periods of rain tomorrow in both Victoria and Vancouver. Victoria's high 17, 20 in Vancouver, 24 the high in Edmonton tomorrow, and lots of sunshine in Calgary as well with a high of 23. Both of those cities looking at wind gusts of 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Same thing for Lethbridge too, by the way. Looking at the rest of the prairies, decent weather here, 23 and sunshine in Saskatoon. Same thing for Regina. Winnipeg high 23. They are going to be seeing a risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow though. And also most of those prairie cities also dealing with a little bit of wind too. Wind gusting to about 40 kilometers per hour. 25 the high tomorrow in Toronto with a mix of sun and cloud. Beautiful sunny skies in both Ottawa and Montreal tomorrow. 24 the high for both of those cities. As we look to the East Coast, we're going to be seeing a little bit more rain in some areas and others not so much. 17 degrees the high in Fredericton, partly cloudy skies. Chance of rain in Halifax, high of 16, 14 the high in Charlottetown, and St. John's, Newfoundland looking at showers and a possibility of a risk of a thunderstorm in the morning, but it should clear up by the afternoon, giving you a mix of sun and cloud. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you, rain or shine, by the Gym in the North. Top-notch equipment and customized classes in Lethbridge's North End.
Shortages of semiconductors took a bite out of Canadian auto sales in August. Sales fell by 11.4% with fewer vehicles available to buy because of chip issues. Industry analysts put sales of Canadian light vehicles at just under 147,000 units in August. That compares with around 165,000 a year earlier. Sales were also down just over 19% from August 2019 before COVID-19. The maker of Ski-Doos and Sea-Doos says its second quarter profit rose from $126.1 million to $212.9 million. BRP says it earned $2.46 per diluted share for the quarter that ended July 31st. That is up from $1.43 per diluted share in the same quarter last year. Revenue totaled $1.9 billion. That is up from $1.2 billion. The company also updated its revenue guidance to forecast an overall increase between 27 and 35% compared with its earlier expectation of a gain of between 28 and 33%. Apple says it needs more time to refine its proposed system to scan U.S. iPhones for images of child sex abuse. It announced that it is delaying the program. Apple revealed last month that it was working on a tool to detect known images of child sex abuse that would work by scanning files before they could be uploaded to iCloud. The company says, based on feedback, it decided to take more time to collect input and make improvements before releasing the update. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 26 points on the day to finish at 20,821. The Dow was down 74 points to 35,369. The S&P 500 was down 1 point to 4535, and the Nasdaq was up 32 points to 15,364. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 70 cents to 69.29 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 7 cents to 4.71 US. Gold was up 18.07 to 18.27.74 US an ounce, and silver was up 81 cents to 24.72 US an ounce. Wheat is at $410 per metric ton, barley's at $408, canola's at $8.92, and corn is at $429 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $1.25 to $124.80. Feeder cattle were down $1.83 to $162.48, and lean hogs were down 28 cents to 89.58. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.84 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the province announced that beginning Saturday, Alberta will be going back to mandatory masks at indoor public spaces and workplaces. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says the Delta variant is making its way through the 30% of Albertans who are unvaccinated, causing beds in the ICUs to fill up. Shandro says 80% of new patients are those who have not yet received the jab. He says the Delta variant is straining the healthcare system and masking is needed right now. A mixed martial arts fighter is now fighting his way to City Hall. Coming up, we chat with Lethbridge mayoral candidate Colton Menzak. Stay tuned. October 18th will see municipal elections taking place across Alberta. Joining us now today is Colton Menzak. He's one of the several candidates in the Lethbridge mayoral race. Welcome to Bridge City News, Colton.
Hi.
Now share a bit of who you are and why you decided to run for mayor.
Well, I was born and raised in Lethbridge. I've lived here my whole life. I grew up playing team sports and working for my grandpa's local construction company. After I was done high school, I graduated from LCI. I worked on a drilling rig for 10 years and I fought mixed martial arts fights. And currently I live on the west side with my wife, and she's pregnant with our first kid. We got 2 dogs, and yeah, life is good. And I decided to run for mayor just because watching all the problems in town and, you know, the homelessness, the debt, things like this just keep going spiraling more and more out of control. And it doesn't seem like anyone really has an answer. So I think that I do have the answers, or if I don't, I'll be able to find them, or someone does, or we can see what's worked before and use that.
Now, one of your top priorities is to lower taxes and reduce wasteful spending, but also maintain city services. Can you explain your plan where the money would come from to maintain the city services with less taxes coming in?
Well, I think if prices are increasing year after year, that's unsustainable. So right there, that tells you we need to restructure whatever's going on so that we can make it more sustainable, because that's the ultimate goal, is to have things get cheaper and be more sustainable. So you see in the private market, you know, TVs and stuff like this, they get, through scientific innovation, they get leaps and bounds better and cheaper. So I think if we, instead of throwing more and more money at things, if we restructure the the services, then we'll be able to make them cheaper. And through that and through other incentivized programs, maybe we can make a profit instead of paying for these things, you know?
Now, homelessness is a real issue in major cities across the country, not just in major cities, but some of the smaller cities, including ours here in the Windy City. Now, Colton, you would love to end homelessness, something that, of course, is easier said than done. What's your plan to really make that happen?
Well, places like Medicine Hat in Utah, they use a housing first approach. And as lots of people know, Medicine Hat has net zero homeless people. So the idea is you get them in housing first. That's, you know, then they're not homeless. Then they also need some sort of incentive to stay off the streets, right? Rehabilitation, some sort of purpose, programs, jobs. You know, we got to set up programs for these people to succeed so that they're not just putting back into the system and going back to jail and things like this. And Medicine Hat says that keeping them homeless costs about $100,000 a year and housing them costs $20,000. So it's a win-win, really. If we can house them and save money, then I really don't see how, then we can turn a negative into a positive, right?
Now, one of your goals is to also clean up the downtown core, Colton. What would you do to make our city center safer and even more inviting to visit and do business in?
Well, I think, well, the big problem is the homelessness downtown, and you go down there and you see 20, 30 at a time just roaming around. So once we give those people a place to go and some sort of purpose and something to do and clean up their lives, then we can also allocate more police officers on foot walking around. I mean, I see security guards everywhere at every business. And if we had a little bit of help from the police, maybe we could set them up on foot patrols, high crime areas where they could hang out, and, you know, maybe take them off of sitting at a 4-way stop for traffic somewhere, or allocate them differently in that sense.
So $1 million was recently taken out of the police budget here in Lethbridge. Would you put that money back in? And if so, why?
I think there's lots of money. We just need to allocate the money differently. You know, I would have to look at where all the police are, but I see lots of police sitting, like I said, in traffic, sitting at 4-way stops, sitting at check stops. We have photo radar guys everywhere. Maybe we should allocate those resources to crime until we get a handle on it. And once we do, then maybe we can go back to creating more revenue through traffic fines.
Now, part of your platform, Colton, is, if you were to become mayor, a People Helping People program. What exactly is that, and what would it look like?
Well, I would start it off just with myself and a phone. And if you have any issues, you can call me, say you just want to tell me I'm doing a bad job, or maybe you need a ride to work, or you don't have a family support system to help you, and you just need like a leg up. Sometimes people get down and it's not necessarily their faults. And if you don't have someone to give you a hand, then you just end up kind of in that perpetual cycle of destruction. So it would start with me, and ultimately I want to create a self-supporting program through volunteers that are more morally inclined, who just want to help people out, you know. So not everyone has I have a big family, so I really wouldn't use this, but I know some people don't, or maybe their family doesn't see eye to them. Whatever the case, they'll have somewhere they can call and either maybe give their opinion on how to change the city or help it, or maybe you just need a ride to work, or maybe, anything, no restrictions on it.
Now, you speak of wanting to see decentralized decision-making here in our city. Can you explain really what you mean by that?
Well, right now we're taking a lot of dictates from provincial and national authorities, and they don't always suit our best need. So I think if we decentralize those decisions and make a more specific approach, as long as we're following the Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is the supreme law of the land, then we can make better decisions for everyone to succeed, right? This past year, I worked a lot of security through the shutdowns and everything. And, you just see after locking everyone down and putting them out of business, one of the unintended consequences was more homeless people, which sometimes people have a good idea, but they don't think about the unintended consequences. So if we make our own decisions locally, then I think that we'll fare better for the big decisions and the more local decisions as well.
Colton, most candidates agree that our city needs more transparency and accountability. Now, if you're elected mayor, how would you help turn things around?
Well, I think right now we're choosing a lot of policy just based on, good intentions and good thoughts, but the outcomes aren't always the best. So we have a good idea, we put a bunch of money into it, and then we kind of turn our heads and look the other way and expect things to go good. So I think choosing programs that have a good track record and then following up, you got to be there every day, making sure things are running smooth, things are running good, asking people, how are things going? You don't just turn your back, look the other way, and then expect everything to get better. Also, if we can't fix a problem, we need to know who is the problem, who's in the way, or what, right? Because sometimes if we're not getting the votes, we need to know if we want to fix homelessness, who we need to get out to get the proper votes in so that we can fix homelessness. Or maybe there's other barriers in the way, but just telling the public what is in the way. Why isn't this happening? There should be more discussion and more involvement with everyone in the community.
Colton, let's talk a bit about reconciliation. A lot of Canadians are talking about that right now. We have that new national holiday, Truth and Reconciliation, on September the 30th. How important is that for you, considering we have the Blackfoot Confederacy right out our back door here?
Well, yeah, it's a horrible atrocity. And, a lot of these things that were done by the government. So, one of my things is to shorten the scope of government. So I think that, I would put the blame on the government, and I think the solution to make sure this doesn't happen again is to reduce the scope of the government.
Now, the issue of poor parking availability both at Lethbridge College and the University of Lethbridge is something that you would like to address. What do you think is the solution?
I think between the parking officials, they're giving away lots of tickets. We need to try and reduce that, because those are our entrepreneurs. Our children are, our kids from 18 to 25. We want them taking risks, and it seems like we're drowning them in debt and tickets. And if we could maybe reduce the traffic fines and then build some infrastructure. We have lots of land in this country. We could easily build more parking lots, or, two-story structures, get some funding provincially. I know there's lots of funding for electric trains, but there doesn't seem to be too much for parking for the university and college kids. So I'm sure we could find the money somewhere, and there's lots of land. We can make more parking. And I know there's also charge for parking. So if we could talk to whoever's in charge at the college or universities and try and maybe give them a break and, just make enough parking so they can park there and educate themselves, instead of them having to run around and try not to get fines and then have to deal with fines while going to school. I know that must be tough.
Colton, COVID-19 is still an issue as we've seen case counts continue to rise here in Alberta. If you're elected mayor, how would you go about handling things here in Lethbridge? Would you maybe like to see another face covering bylaw implemented?
I would end all mandatory mandates. That would include masks, vaccines. I would recommend civil disobedience for things that go against the Constitution and Charter of Rights and Freedoms, since that is the supreme law of the land, and just allow adults to make their own decisions. The people are smart. They know how to, if they want to wear masks, they can. If they want to wash their hands, vitamin C, vitamin D, working out, all these things are great. And then just educating. I would just work on educating the people on the best ways to deal with the COVID pandemic.
Our city seems to kind of divided right now over whether or not to have supervised consumption sites and injection sites. How do you see things? Should our city maybe set up another permanent SCS, or is there a better way to reduce the drug use and crime here in our city?
I think the police policies and laws that they're enforcing ultimately dictates the crime. So you see places like Portugal where they decriminalized all drugs. They have less drug use. It's cheaper because you're not sending drug addicts to jail, and they're using a rehabilitation approach. And the addicts are getting better at a faster rate. Children are using less drugs, and just across the board, it's better in every way. So I think we need police to get on board and stop treating these people like criminals. We need to stop prosecuting petty amounts of drugs, decriminalize all small amounts of drugs. I mean, they're doing the drugs anyway. The more we're attacking it, the more that we find them, the more they go into jail and get in this perpetual cycle of destruction. And that's not good for anyone. I mean, the people are shooting up in the streets. So the war on drugs is an obvious failure, and it's not working. It's just prohibition 2.0. So I think we need a more compassionate approach.
So you believe that we should have a permanent SCS set up once again in our city? Maybe working your way towards the 4 pillars, including intox and detox beds? Because some people that had a problem with the original SCS were saying we were just enabling. That's all. There was no real good solution there.
I mean, I would prefer rehabilitation centers, housing, and then, if you have your own house, anything you want to do inside your own house is fine. A bar is essentially a safe consumption site, so it's not that much different. But if we can get these people on their feet, rehabilitated in a home where they're functional, people are going to do drugs no matter what. We're not going to stop that. But yeah, I would definitely, I wouldn't support anything downtown in the core of the center, but if we could build facilities, more on the outskirts of places where there's not businesses right beside to be distracted, and then use a more rehabilitation approach, and then housing, and then go from there.
Colton, many see small businesses as the backbone of the Canadian economy, in particular right here in Alberta. What would you do to improve the business climate for business people? Many have struggled during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Firstly, I would reduce taxes. That's the biggest thing, is saving people money. Secondly, I would promote civil disobedience. If the government wants you to enforce things like masks or shut your business down, that goes against the Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So I would recommend businesses just stay open and carry on business as usual. The whole crime situation, I mean, we have security at all these places in town. I think we need to allocate more police officers to the high crime areas to maybe just sit outside businesses and have their appearance known, right? If they're sitting outside of places, then most likely criminals won't come and bug the businesses. So I think that's a good approach too, is using the police officers and resources we have. But ultimately, we can't be hurting them with all these mandates. I mean, mandate after mandate, the businesses are hurting already. And I know lots that have gone under, and lots of people tell me that if they shut down again, they will go under. That'll be it. So I mean, we can't keep doing that, and I don't think we can do it even one more time. I wouldn't support any lockdowns or anything like that.
So Colton, bottom line, brass tacks, why should our viewers vote for you on October the 18th to become the next mayor of Lethbridge?
Well, Albert Einstein said that you can't solve any problem from the same state of consciousness that it was created in. And I believe that all the other candidates are kind of have the same ideas and the same philosophies. And I'm a little bit different. I see things a little bit differently. They're more than likely all into forced coercion. I'm more of a volunteerist. I like to concentrate on a more broad spectrum analysis, looking at economics, philosophy, psychology, everything together, seeing what happened in the past, using history as the best marker of what to do, because nothing is new under the sun. Everything's been done. So we can see exactly how to change things for the better. We just need to do the proper things that have worked in the past.
Colton Menzak is one of the Lethbridge mayoral candidates in the upcoming Alberta municipal election. Colton, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Raising a family to follow a godly path in today's world can be challenging, to say the least. Statistics tell us that many young people fall away from the faith in their latter teenage years. Today's guest has some helpful advice on how to keep things headed the right way. Phil Bell joins us from the UK. He is a pastor, a columnist, and a blogger, and author of the Family Ministry Playbook. You sound like a really busy guy, Phil. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Jeanette. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, Phil, first of all, give us a little snapshot of what your book is about and who it's written for.
Well, it's a book that I wrote after spending 20 years in the trenches of ministry and watching families just struggle, and also, candidly, being a father myself and struggling through raising kids and trying to invest in them, and also having seen so many kids, as you rightly say, walking away from the faith. I started to see a disconnect, and really this book is written initially for people who are in ministry. But it's really written for anybody that cares about reaching the next generation for Christ, anybody. And if you read Deuteronomy 6, verse 4, it says, "Hear, O Israel." And there's a message to pass on the faith to the next generation, but it's a message for everybody. So it's designed for ministry people, but it's also designed for anybody that's part of a church that wants to reach the next generation for Christ in some healthy and practical ways.
Mm-hmm. Now, Phil, many youths are suffering from depression, suicidal thoughts, broken families, and of course, bullying has been a huge issue lately too. So why is this generation struggling so much to cope?
Yeah, it's a great question. I just read, just this week, a Wall Street Journal article about the impact of the digital world that kids live in, and the we're drowning in dopamine, I think was the headline. I think there's two things that come into play very much for this generation. First of all, we are saturated with so much information, and our brains are switched on all the time. That's not just for kids, that's us as parents, that's us as families. So we have no time and no room to breathe, and we're always so busy and engaged either in technology or extracurricular everything. As families, we're not designed to run that fast for that long. And so I think a lot of the things that we see with depression in this generation are connected to the busyness and the frenetic paces that we're keeping as families. But I also think it is the fact we're allowing our kids to be so engaged 24/7 with technology, and there is a lot out there that talks about the impact of technology. So I think that's the thing. And then obviously we've got this culture that allows kids to say, you can be anything and anyone you want, and there's no repercussions. I believe in a gospel that loves us tremendously, but there is a balance of grace and truth. And what we need for our kids is not only to help them to slow down in their lives, not only for us to slow down and for our kids to slow down, but we also need to teach them what it means to live in God's grace and God's truth. And when we find a good balance of that grace and truth, I think that's helpful for our kids. I think we actually live in a world of so much grace, and that sounds a bit weird to say that, but we're saying to kids, hey, you can be anything and anyone you want, there's no repercussions, but God loves us so much. He wants us also to understand the truth. And when we believe and understand and live out his truth, there's tremendous freedom that comes with that. And I think there's a good balance of that our kids need these days.
Now, Phil, you write that you find most parents aren't sure where to even begin when it comes to raising their kids with a solid faith foundation. Do you find that troubling?
I do, and I think we've spent so many years, the church has done a tremendous job in so many ways. I was a youth pastor for 12 plus years, and I invested in kids. I think the challenge is, as families got busier, we kind of had this mentality of leave it to the experts, drop them off at church with the youth pastors like people like me, and the kids are going to be okay. I think what's happened is as families have got busier and they've left it to the church in some ways. And I'll be honest, I'm one of those busy parents too. I'm hoping someone else is going to help my kids. I think what happens is that hour per week that maybe our kids are getting, and sometimes for most families, it's not even an hour per week. They come to church maybe twice a month. An hour per week isn't going to help our kids really have a solid faith. So what it requires is to slow everything down, to create margin in our schedules, and start with the basics. In Deuteronomy 6 again, it's all about the laying down and the getting up. It's the comings and goings. It's the teachable moments and bringing faith into the everyday. I would say to parents who are watching this now is, it's not rocket science. You don't have to be a theologian. You don't have to have a PhD in the Bible. You just have to slow down, find time with your kids, do things that they like, and have opportunities to talk about what's going on in their lives, if you create that margin, and then it's bringing faith into the everyday. And it's also, and this is so important, looking at your kids and saying, that is a huge question you've got right now. Honestly, right now as I stand here, I don't know what the answer is. And believe me, I get plenty of those moments as a parent, even as a pastor. So what I say to my kids is say, hey, let's just take some time to look at that together. Let's go figure that out together. Let's go on that journey together. But again, I just want to impress upon the people watching today is it requires us all to slow down so that we have the opportunities to play and have fun with our kids, have those conversations with those kids, and allow those questions to bubble up. When we're so busy and so engaged in technology and we've got extracurricular everything, we're not going to have those opportunities. So slow down, have those teachable moments, and be prepared to say to kids, I don't know the answers, but go on that journey with them. And it's okay, you'll find the answers. There are plenty of resources out there.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, of course, how busy life is and how crazy, busy parents are. And your book encourages churches to actually partner with parents in the moral development of kids. So how does this happen, practically speaking?
That's a great question. So I think first things first is, I think as the church, anybody who's watching this today, if you're part of, working with kids or students, the first thing we need to do is we need to listen to the parents and we need to ask them an important question, which is, we're here to partner with you. What do you need help with? What are the issues that you're facing? And I think when we ask those questions, we get the important answers. And then from those answers, we look for ways in which we can resource parents and ways in which we can equip parents. So what I mean by that is, let's say that a parent comes up and says, I don't even know how to navigate through technology. I don't even know where to begin, and my kids are making mistakes and stuff is going on. If that's something that they need help with, let's go find resources. Let's find articles. Let's find a way to have a technology contract with your kid. Anything you can find that's going to be, but you can put in the hands of the parents that's practical, that's going to help them. And then I think second of all, from there, it's then we say, okay, now that you've got these practical tools in your hands, let us tell you about some other things that you can do in your family life that's going to help you teach your kids even more than that. But again, it's meeting parents where they are, meeting them in their need, and then taking from there and equipping them with the Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9 framework, which is to impress it upon our hearts. As parents, we need to grow in our faith. It's also impressing upon our children's hearts. It's in the teachable moments. And it's having some intentional times that we make way for faith conversations to happen. So I would say let's meet parents practically where they are, resource them, and then we can start to talk about how to equip them.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Now, Phil, how bad is it? How many kids are walking away from their faith today, and what can be done about it?
That's a great question. So I've seen studies everywhere from 50% to 80% of kids are walking away from their faith. Now, when we see those studies, they are scary. But what I've also seen in the 20 years of ministry is that a lot of these kids will walk away from the faith. And a lot of parents who are watching this now, you might be in that situation and you might be devastated by that. I say, don't give up hope. Keep praying for them. Keep talking to them. Keep having moments where you can bring faith into those conversations. But know that I have seen, and people like me have seen, that sometimes it's like a boomerang. When they eventually get married and have kids, they suddenly start to realize that life is not as easy as they thought it was. And a lot of the time, where do they come back to? They come back to the church. They come back to their faith. And it's in those moments that they will come back. So whether it's 50% or 80%, know that what the investment that you make as parents today is going to have an impact on them. And even if they might seem to walk away, have hope, keep praying, keep having conversations. There will be a moment where they will want to come back because they've got so many big questions about life.
I love that. Now, in your experience, what do kids most want from their parents and why?
$1 million question, right?
Yeah.
We could spend another hour answering this. But I can say this personally, I think simply put is that they want to know that they are loved, that they are cared for. And I think every parent watching this today would say, well, I'm pretty sure my kids know that they're loved and that they're cared for. The problem is it's the age-old truth of, how do you spell love? It's Time. And I think that the way that we really do display that love is to really slow down ourselves and make way for our kids. And so what do they really need? They need our time. They need us to show up in the margins of life. They need us to create margins for the margins of life, if you will. And so I think that's the greatest thing. I think if there's one thing that's devastating families in our world today, it's just the frenetic pace. We're on a family sabbatical right now. We recognize that we were running too fast and too furious for too long. We've got some healing to do as a family. I'm walking the walk right now. We slowed everything down. We made some big changes. We make some big sacrifices to slow down so that we can spend more time together as a family. And guess what? What happens is a lot of the issues that we didn't see that were there are now starting to bubble up. And we could think, oh my goodness, what have we done? But it's actually a good thing, because now we can see some issues, we can lean into them, and with God's love and God's grace, he can bring healing to our family. So if there's a family watching this today, if there's a parent watching this, think about how you can slow down and create margin for your kids, because that's what they truly need, and they need to be heard. It's such a busy world. Everybody's trying to speak. Your kids just need to be heard, and they need to be loved with time.
Yeah. Now, are there some things that are common denominators, that maybe things that both the kids and the parents want?
That's a great question. I don't know about want, but I would answer with this. I would say what they need is, all of us need to learn, and for many of us, it's something that maybe we've never learned before. It's about what it means to get away each day or in moments and be quiet. We hear God's word, we fill ourselves with God's word, that's great. But when are we listening to that still voice that's telling us, you're loved, you're forgiven, I have a plan and a purpose for you? We need that on a daily encounter in our busy lives. So what we need as parents, and what our kids need, is to learn the art of slowing down, being quiet, and allowing God to speak to us. And if you look at Jesus, he went to those quiet, solitary places. There were so many things he could be doing. And in Mark chapter 1, I love that picture that's painted where the disciples catch up with him, and they almost berate him and say, where were you? And he almost doesn't acknowledge their need at the time. He says, let's go to the next towns and villages to preach the gospel here, because that's the reason why I've come. And for so many of us, there are too many opportunities in our lives these days. It's not about having enough opportunities. It's about taking the right opportunities. And as parents and as kids, we're trying to take every opportunity. The fear of missing out is absolutely killing us. We need to take the right opportunities in life, and we'll only ever know the right opportunities for our families if we just slow down, start to learn the art of listening to the Holy Spirit and what he has to say to each one of us personally.
Now, I know the stats are huge. 35% of kids live in single-parent family homes. So that means these parents are super overwhelmed. And you've obviously helped a lot of families. What are some lessons that you've learned from helping hurting parents?
That's a great question. And one of the things I see, we were in the Lake District here in the UK recently, and one of our friends, in fact, it was a foster sister of mine, came to visit with her daughter, and she's a single mum. And one of the things, I know that she needs constantly, and the church needs to come around single parents with, is the encouragement that you're doing a great job, that you've got a hard job, and we see you, we know it's difficult. So we need to acknowledge that first, and we need to let them know that we're here for them. We need to show up in practical ways. But I think if you're a single parent watching this tonight, the job that you're doing is absolutely amazing. You've got it tougher than anyone else. But here's the thing is God can work in and through you in mighty ways. But here's what I would say to you is I know that you feel alone, but get involved in a church. Get involved in a place where your kids can be involved in great youth ministries and children's ministries. But get in a place where you can be ministered to as a single parent. The biggest thing, in Deuteronomy 6, again, impress these things upon your heart. If you're a single parent, the best thing you can do is to invest in your faith journey. And that will have implications for how your kids see you and how you can show up in their lives. So you've got a tough job, single parents. You're doing everything for your kids all the time. Find a church that's going to minister to you, and do not feel guilty that you're going there to get ministered to. It's okay. That's what the church is for. That's who we are. We're your family. If you've got gaps in your family, let us come alongside you and fill those gaps. And don't feel guilty for it at all. Show up and be ministered to. That's the best bit of advice I could give a single parent. Show up to be invested in and grow in your faith journey. It will make the difference for your kids.
Wow. Well, thanks so much for being with us today. Phil, it looks like we're out of time, but it's been so great to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette.
Phil Bell is the author of the Family Ministry Playbook. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.